Welcome back. Now we will discuss about the role of engineers as moral leaders. In the past two sessions we have discussed about engineers as managers, engineers as consultants, independent consultants. Today we will be focusing on role of engineers as moral leaders. Why these are important, why the moral leaders are important today. So they are aim at like serving, they aim at developing the skills of others, and there could be like questions of dilemma under each functions where they need to take a decision, where taking into considerations the need of the situations, conflict of interest, etc. So that is where this moral leadership is important. So moving forward, first we will try to discuss about the 7 habits of highly moral leaders. So they have strong ethical character, they have a passion to do right, they are morally proactive, they are like they first try to think what could be the implications of their actions, maybe not only short term but long term implications, and they try to take some proactive measures to find out what could be the degree of harm and what they can do to protect themselves from the harm. So, and moral leaders are stakeholder inclusive, means they want to include the stakeholders, all kinds of stakeholders in the decision, and they want to see the effect of the decisions on each of the stakeholders. So they have an obsession towards fairness and like justice, so that there is no wrong done to anyone. So they are principled decision makers, means they move by values and guided by values and virtues of life. So what they do is moral leaders integrate the ethics wisdom with the management wisdom. So it is not like what is correct, but we need to focus on what is morally or ethically correct. So we will discuss with some functions and questions that managers must deal with, and more so like the engineers managers must deal with in their managerial role. So one of the questions functions could be conceptual design, and the dilemma question could be like, will the product be useful? So, and if it is useful, then will the design be safe for those who are going to use it? These are very tricky questions, again based on the utilitarian perspective, and because see, we do not know like who will be using it. So like, will the design be safe for those who are using it? Then it depends on how we are defining who will be using it, how we are defining who will not be using it by mistake also, so that we understand the end use of the product will always be in safe hands. They will follow the processes as discussed. They will not going to mishandle or misuse it. How do we make a guarantee for it, or should we incorporate as much as safety as possible in the design, so that it is like, even if it is mishandled, the chances of like accidents are reduced. So these are certain decisions that the leader manager, in terms of like moral leaders, need to take, and in a very like they have to broaden their thought process, think of all different alternatives possible of use and misuse of the products, and what could be the after effects of that, and then they try to incorporate certain check measures in their design. So next important function where some questions the engineers as managers may need to tackle is market study. So like questions like why you are doing this study? Is it to find out that report a true fact, or it is a part of a deceptive action? Where is whom have you taken as your sample, for how much long period you have made that observation to come to a conclusion that you are claiming? So these could be questions that engineers as managers may need to tackle with respect to the function of market study. So question major is like, is the study unbiased, or it is just going to be implemented for the sake of money to attract investors. So next is specifications. Like first we have to understand like whether there are any stated specifications which is widely accepted for the quality of the product. If yes, then whether the company has produced the like products as per the meeting the standards and codes, and the standards that are written also, are it like physically realizable or not, or we have set some standards which is very hard to achieve. So in terms of contracts, there is another function which is in terms of contracts, like questions may come up with realistic to our cost figures and time schedules realistic, then is it a bid which is made low to get the job with the hope of future negotiating? So what happens if in a competitive bidding, sometimes if a person bids very low and the person sometimes get the order, but if this low bidding is something which is unrealistic, unachievable, something which the company who has got the contract will not be able to provide for, and in future they may think of renegotiating with a different structure, then what happens? Maybe in the original, when the original bidding was going on, and who may not have given as much a lowest price as this bidder, could have given the better like deliverables or the quality, but in search for like keeping towards the lowest in financial bids, so we may have missed out on expertise of other organizations. So like this we have to find out the cost figures and the time schedules given are realistic or not. In terms of analysis, we have to find out like is there any experienced engineer who can judge a computer program which gives reliable results, because these are expertise domain and lay person may not always have the correct answer for it. So it has to be a domain expert who can come up with this knowledge. Next function is design, which is a very important function. So, and in design, before we come up to the solution, it is very important to understand, like before we come up with any design, it is very important to understand, like have all alternatives been explored or not, if a safe exit is provided or not, then whether it is like user friendliness has been given importance for the design or not, and was it like some patents were violated, so otherwise it may become a legal issue. So whether all exports have been alternatives have been explored, then exit provided, user friendliness, then patent violation. These are some important points to take a decision on the design. Next important area is that of like purchasing. So we may get something in a low price, but we cannot like compromise sometimes on a quality. The other aspect is also could be true, maybe the quality is not so good, but by charging, we understand by charging high price, they may claim in a subtle way like they are high priced, therefore they are quality goods. So like both things may or may not match. So to put a check on that, we have to understand whether the parts and materials received for manufacturing of the products have been tested for quality or not. So having a quality check is very important. Like we have to understand like whether this each and every parts and material have been quality tested or not. Another important is manufacturing parts, like it talks of workplace safety, it is free from noise, free from emission of toxic fumes. So is the time allowed for quality workmanship, means increasing their knowledge base or not? These are important decisions. So like whether workplace safety is mentioned, whether they are free of noise, then toxic gases are there or not, toxic fumes. So within what time they need to finish a job. Sometimes it may happen that expectations is so much, but the time given to perform is very less, so whether they will be able to tackle with those things or not. Next we'll focus on the area of assembly and construction. So the question here it is, so are the workers familiar with the purpose and basic functions of the product? Who supervises safety? Because if they are familiar with the purpose and basic functions of the product, they may develop a like self-regulated safety measures to handle these things properly. And also these gives like the workers familiarity with the purpose and basic functions of the product gives the employee a sense of connectivity and job satisfaction, like complete understanding of the nature of the job, meaning of the job, and that may lead to their better contribution because they can see a holistic picture now. Then comes to the final test of the product. So because they are engineers as managers, so we have to understand that there should not be any conflict of interest. So testers, manufacturers or construction management teams, they should be independent of each other. So if something comes out in the testing, the testers are like independent enough to tell like this is due to the manufacturer or this is due to the construction management team. But if they are included within that team, they may be fearful of opening up. So we have to ensure as engineers and managers like their teachers are sufficiently independent of the manufacturer, the construction management team. Now when it comes to the sale of the product, they again certain decisional points that they need to take, like do we pay bribe, yes or no, whether the advertisement is honest or not, whether customers are given really good advices. So like for doing certain testing, whether like informed consent is required or not, and if so, how, what is the process to get it done. These are certain questions which are like questions of dilemma, irrespective of the maybe culture, religion and time frame. And this we need to remember, like regarding bribes, on honest advertising, etc. So like when it again talking about the function of installation and commission, here what happens, like after it's got tested, then fine, if you see, like after it has got here we see, like after it has got the final testing of the product, then it needs to be coming to the market. So there we come up with the sale of the product. So there we find, like whether again we have found how do we sell it, like any bribes are given, honest advertisement is given, informed consent is required, yes or no. So these are connected to that. And after that, when it is installation or commission, after you have sale, we have to go to the site to install it. So there the questions which needs to be tackled is, do the users get enough training? So if there is a safe exit, so whether people are, neighbors are informed of possible toxic emotions. Otherwise we just cannot go and install something. In society there are other stakeholders involved also, which may or may not agree to we doing certain things in terms of like installation, commissioning of the products or services, so or for a project. So we have to understand, like whether they get training, so the users get training of how to use it, is there a safe exit, and neighbors are well informed ahead. After installation is done, the function which is there is the use of the product. Again also we need to cross check, like whether users are protected from the harm. So then do users know the risk involvement in it? So when the users get misguided, while sometimes information are passed on to them, and they are not able to take a rational judgment. So that's why it's a part of the responsibility to find out, like the other users protected from harm. So do they know the amount of risk properly, and more so, like whether they have taken a conscious decision of using the product. Next, after we have used it, we are just going serially step by step. What you find after you've been using it, next question comes, that of maintenance and repair. So there the possible questions could be like, are maintenance regularly carried away by competent staff? Then do the manufacturers still carry spare parts or not? Or like with the changing time, sometimes we feel like it's everything in use and throw, maybe it's not possible. So whether there are regular people who can take care of these faults, and then try to maintain it, try to see the products are maintained in original conditions, and repair for the faults. Do they carry spare parts with them, which shows like the maintenance culture is there? These are very important questions to be handled. Next function, which is important from the perspective of the organization, is recall. So, if there is any commitment to monitor the experiment, and if necessary, is there a need to recall the product? This is again a self search that the company should check to find out like whether everything is going in a correct way, or they need to recall the product. And when you're talking of decommissioning, so these are again questions of recycling the valuable materials and disposal of toxic waste handled at the end of the useful life. Where do we do it? What we do with the toxic waste? So their valuable materials, how do we dispose it, and at the end of the useful life, so that the environment does not get polluted. This we need to understand. The environment should not get polluted as a part of this recycling and disposal. So again, for that we discussed about the maintenance again comes to be a very important thing. So maintenance, repair, disposal. So what we find throughout the chain, the whole chain of the product life cycle, starting from its design phase to its maybe the material procurement, then getting it designed, then maybe installing it, then before that doing a market survey, then installing it, then having a cross check about the use of the product, taking care of the maintenance part of it, then again deinstallation, decommissioning, so that it is again getting, if any like byproducts are there, the use of those in an environment friendly way, so that it's less of harm produced, and quality is maintained at each of the steps, safety is assured at each of the steps. We have taken care of the long term impact of these things. So there will be dilemma, there will be sometimes shortcuts available, there could be like requirements of maybe rigorous testing and retesting, even how you do the testing. So there could be 2-3 paths, one which is easy, one which is shortcut, one which may give you immediate result, another one which is tedious, which may be painful, which may require long hours of testing, which may require revisiting whatever you have done time and again to find out whether things are working properly or not, and whether we are like maintaining safety, whether looking into the health issues or not, of not only the present generation but a future generation, which is maybe a time consuming process. And the leader, as a moral leader, now may need to choose between these alternatives, taking into mind the safety aspect, the health aspect of the population at large, and for the long term sustainability, and also taking the environmental issues into consideration, so that we are not going to provide harm to the environment. So there, the way that you make your decision, so if you are acting like a moral leader, it helps you to make correct decision. Thank you.